It's not safe here. The gentle voice came out of nowhere, startling Rainbow Dash. The Pegasus pony snapped around with raised hooves and wings spread, ready to fight. A split second later, she was frozen on the spot, incredulous. Nightmare, she began, the words dying in her throat when she realized she'd misspoken. I'd prefer Princess Luna, thank you, came the curt reply as the Alicorn Princess slowly walked over to peer over the cliff's edge with detached curiosity. It had been an all-too-easy slip of the tongue in the dead of the night. Luna looked very little like the broken and defeated mare left in the ruin of Nightmare Moon's defeat. She didn't seem like the reserved and apologetic princess they'd partied with shortly after, either. Under the moon, that was her namesake, and the carpet of stars that were her domain. She stood tall and proud, looking most of all like a part of the night sky alighted on the ground. Her wings were half unfurled even as she stood at rest, making her seem bigger than she was, but the menace of Nightmare Moon was gone, where the strength remained. Sorry, Princess, Rainbow Dash managed, kneeling down to her forehoofs while she looked up at the princess. Luna was still staring down into the abyss. Thoughtful. Think nothing of it. What's the matter, child? Nothing. I'm fine, Dash lied, getting up. The bigger pony merely looked at her at that. Nothing, is it? There is no reason Equestria's self-styled finest flyer is crying like a foal in the middle of the night. The Moon Princess had arched a brow, looking almost amused. This only served to incense Rainbow Dash. What's it to you anyway? Why are you poking your snout into this? Are you spying on me? Rainbow Dash raised her voice, yelling at Princess Luna. Yelling at a princess. She didn't even care. She's hardcore. Luna, for her part, took it in stride, her expression unchanging. She said nothing. Rainbow Dash was practically snarling, leaping to fill the void with words. It doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter anymore anyway. It's over. Rainbow Dash screamed, an entirely inappropriate, desperate grin crept across her face at the thought, and she felt almost liberated. It's over. There's nothing I can do, so I'm free! Twilight doesn't care, so I can focus on what really matters. I can get back to practicing my triple Philly Flash. Ha! I win! If it's truly over, if you've no choice, then why are you still here? Luna remarked in that disgustingly quiet tone. Rainbow Dash almost felt ashamed at her outburst when faced with unwavering calm, but her anger remained. What the hay was she talking about? I'm about to leave, okay? It's over! Rainbow Dash snorted and turned away from the alicorn. She stared into the darkness, trying to think about nothing at all. Still here, though. Dash could practically hear the smile in Luna's voice. Shut up! She yelled, but she was instantly made to regret it. The darkness around her suddenly felt oppressive and constrictive. She lost sight of the stars themselves above her, leaving everything a solid black, and the princess, wings and mane trailing the very stuff of night itself, walked past her slowly to stand before her. The wordless menace lingered only for a brief second, though it felt like an eternity. And then she could breathe again. Rainbow Dash fell back on her haunches and let out a shudder, eyes wide. This doesn't look like a pony who is happy and free to focus on what matters to me, Luna said. There was kindness in her eyes, but also a profound sadness. What truly matters, Rainbow Dash? That sentence came out odd. What truly matters, Rainbow Dash? The Wonderbolts, Rainbow Dash answered automatically, her brain shocked back on track. And everything else? Twilight Sparkle? She's just slowing me down, Rainbow said with practiced ease, realizing she could probably ask why Princess Luna knew to ask this, but she dared not. Princess Luna actually chuckled at that, closing her eyes briefly. Rainbow Dash didn't even have the energy to be indignant anymore. What? She asked, voice flat. But the alicorn had lapsed into silence once again, turning to look at the moon which shone down on them, full and bright. Well, I think you've got a long way to go yet. I once spoke words not entirely dissimilar to those. She, in at length, with a bemused smile. I think you lost me there, Dash admitted. Child, having dreams and goals is important, but pursuing them to the exclusion of all else will never make you happy. At best, you'll end up lonely. At worst, you'll end up lonely and bitter. Rainbow Dash blinked. Hey, hang on just a minute. Besides, no matter what your words, you know this isn't you. You're not ready to abandon your friends, not even one, not even a little. Certainly not over something like this. It's not your nature. Again, that tranquility and confidence just served to piss Rainbow off. Who the hey do you think you are? You don't know me! Besides, I didn't do anything. Twilight did! Her voice was cracking, and she hated it. I don't know you? Your element is known to me. Your very nature. You touched upon me when you defeated Nightmare Moon. When you freed me. Dash scratched the back of her head awkwardly. As for the rest, perhaps it's time to put a little faith in your friends, too. Realize that as much as you are to beacon to the others, so, too, can you trust them. Luna looked pointedly across the chasm that separated them from the temple that was barely visible in the distance. All you see is the gap between the two of you, but you know there's a bridge. She helpfully indicated it. And you've got a good pair of wings on your back. She still hates me, and I hate her, Rainbow Dash muttered, eyes still on the divide. Twilight's hooves thundered against the narrow path. Her horn glowed brightly and fought to the cloying darkness of the Everfree Forest with every step. The noises around her were too many to even begin to categorize or identify, and so she had only the false safety of a heedless run. She tripped more than once, and was covered in mud, dirt, and twigs. The forest was growing darker and denser with every step, yet Twilight found that she couldn't slow down even for a single moment. If a log lay in the way, she'd jump it. If her brush made the passage impossible, she'd teleport through it, heedless of any stain and ripped magic bumps and rapid magic jumps were causing her. Panic was slowly building, and she could do nothing to stop her frenzied, callous dash. Rainbow Dash loved her. Rainbow Dash loved her! Her eyes brimmed with tears again. Or was that still? She'd given up on keeping track of, well, anything. Find Rainbow Dash first, then figure this out. Suddenly, there was a sharp snapping noise, and Twilight cried out, momentarily airborne before she could react. She was tumbling hooves over head downwards. It all went blindingly fast, and then she found herself lying, still staring up at the night sky through the canopy. Breathing heavily, Twilight slowly twisted around and tried getting back up on her hooves, only to discover that she couldn't. She felt, rather than saw, that she was bleeding. Before she could contemplate what to do, she realized she wasn't alone. All the animal noises had stopped. This would be a concern in a normal forest for sure, but in the Everfree, Twilight wasn't even sure what it meant, except that it was probably worse still. From her prone position, she could make out a shape on the other side of a small clearing. A big, indistinct shape stood, raised on two legs with its back to her, quietly working on something. It had her saddlebags, Twilight realized with a gasp. Apparently only now becoming aware of her, the creature slowly turned around to face her. It reminded her of some twisted type of diamond dog, but far larger with black, soulless eyes. It was as if someone had heard a description of the two-legged canines and made a mockery of them using nothing but darkness and shadow. It held the saddlebags in one hand and popped apples into its mouth with the other. One by one, the creature popped the treats into its maw with its outsized claws, all while watching her with an utter lack of expression. Twilight hardly noticed. Her attention was upon the other, unopened saddlebag attached to the first one that held her supplies. She coughed, clearing her throat. Excuse me. Hi there. My name is Twilight Sparkle, she began, her voice growing more quiet with each word. And, it seems you've taken my saddlebags. May I have them back, please? The thing merely watched her, as would a particularly cruel pony study a bug. It tossed another apple into its maw without even chewing. Its teeth were far too large to effectively bite down on anything smaller than a pony. Twilight swallowed, trying again, resisting the urge to bolt. It wouldn't take the monster more than 10 steps of its feet to reach Twilight still. She couldn't flee empty-hoofed. I mean, feel free to eat my food, actually. I mean, those apples are really good, aren't they? Oh, and Fluttershy grew the carrots herself. They're really something special. She usually reserves them for Angel and the other bonies, and the other bunnies, but she insisted on giving me some, even though I wasn't very hungry. I really miss my friends right now. She didn't know why she said that last part out loud. Fairly sure this thing could not talk, it was rapidly becoming a monologue for her own benefit. The creature leaned a little closer and growled, clutching the saddlebags protectively. At the very least, it could understand her. Twilight couldn't decide whether this was a good thing or not. But the thing is, I'm gonna need what's in the other saddlebag. It's not food, but I need it back. To Twilight's surprise, the umbrail thing gingerly reached into said saddlebag and extracted the feather with a sick grin on its face. When it spoke, it was in a deep, gravelly whisper. "You want this, little pony? You desire this? Well, it's mine now." Twilight Sparkle slowly struggled to stand. She took it at a time, and it cost her. She felt a sharp jolt of pain, but she didn't say or do anything else until she was on top of all four hooves. She even took a small step forward before she could stop herself, her whole body shaking. "Please, it's worth nothing to you. Just give me the feather. You can have the rest." "No. If the pony wants it, I want it. Mine!" The brute held on to the feather, daring Twilight to do anything about it. All Twilight could think about was that she was sure that the creature would harm the feather with its dirty claws. Rainbow Dash's feather. Her feather. "Hand me that feather. Now." Twilight extended a hoof that shook as much as her voice. "Come and take it. You're just a scared little pony. You've got nothing." The beast roared back, oblivious to the fact that the purple unicorn's eyes had begun to glow subtly, and entirely mistaken as to what Twilight was afraid of. Not afraid. Princess Luna, ruler of the night, flinched visibly and opened her eyes wide in surprise. Fortunately, Rainbow Dash was still moping with her back turned, perhaps her sister have cared, being more relaxed regarding matters of decorum, but Luna thanked her stars. It would never do to show their subject's weakness in any shape or form. All the same, this told her what she needed to know. She smiled inwardly and stepped up close to Rainbow Dash, standing side to side with her, nearly brushing against her, but taking care not to actually touch. "You're wrong anyways," Princess Luna began, knowing full well how much the element of loyalty hated her brusque and superior mannerisms. "Why would Twilight suddenly hate you? She's a clever pony." "You don't know—" Rainbow Dash began, but Luna cut her off, not letting the Pegasus pony get a word in edgewise. "I know more than you think, but what worries me is that you think you hate her." Luna's voice had dropped down a little more, quieter still, forcing the other pony to listen attentively. Rainbow Dash looked up at the alicorn with narrow eyes. Luna was prepared for another outburst, the type of which she was rapidly growing tired, but instead, the smaller pony turned and walked a few paces away. When Rainbow Dash spoke, she sounded calm, almost detached. "It's been my goal all my life. It's all I've ever dreamed. And every time something happens that distracts me from training, it can mean the difference between joining the Wonderbolts and, well, not... I like Twilight. A lot. But I don't think she feels the same. How could she?" It seemed that Rainbow Dash noticed the self-pitying whine that threatened to creep into her voice all the same as Luna did. She took a deep breath to steady herself before she went on. "We're so different. She's smart and clever and all that, and she's got magic. When I see her, and she tells me it's all just a huge mistake, then I can go back to focusing on what's important." The last word was said with very little conviction this time around. The Princess of the Night felt her heart sink a little to see the usually confident pony so subdued. Rainbow Dash could not have presented starker contrast to the picture painted by all of Celestia's stories about the elements. Luna stalked over the smaller Pegasus and lowered her head slowly to look Rainbow Dash straight in the eyes, trying to eliminate all traces of humor and satisfaction from her voice when she repeated her earlier words. Yet, you're still here, Rainbow Dash. She'd apparently only been partially successful, judging by the flush of anger that washed over the Pegasus pony briefly, but nothing more came of it. You're still here because you don't want to see Twilight Sparkle. You're still here because you don't want what's happened to be a mistake. You fear the meeting, and you're delaying it. You're here because you have hope. Hope, Dash repeated, hollowly. Hope is your desire to prove me wrong because you ironically consider me stuck up and arrogant. Greater than your desire to love and be loved. Rainbow Dash, if you're going to fly away, now is the time. Luna made her words a challenge and stepped back as if inviting Rainbow Dash to take off, but she knew she wouldn't. Rainbow Dash frowned and tensed, her wings spreading. Luna corrected herself. She hoped she wouldn't fly away. Hope was precious. Hope was what had made sure that there was a Luna left when Nightmare Moon fell. Hope was how she went on, and how she lived with herself. Finally, the princess's heightened senses picked up faint hoof falls and the rustle of grass and leaves. Rainbow Dash had relaxed a bit and looked defeated, too. She would not have to suffer having disappointed herself tonight. Differences are a good thing, child. Do you want to know a secret? Without waiting for an answer, Luna walked over to the very edge of the cliff and leaned out, peering downwards. From where they stood, a perpetual fog made sure that they couldn't see very far down the sheer cliff face. It's too easy to assume that monsters lurk beneath the fog here. But if you look, you'll find that at the bottom of the chasm here, there grows a flower that's unique to this area. And it doesn't grow anywhere else, Luna said. She frowned, thinking about what else she could possibly say, fishing for inspiration. There are many sayings and natural phenomena that tell the same tale of what happens when opposites meet. It's not an obstacle, unless you make it one. With these words, the princess kicked off and hovered slowly off the ground with slow, powerful wing beats. Rainbow Dash looked up at her, apparently still lost in thought. Luna didn't wait for a bow or any parting words. In a moment, she was gone, just as Rainbow Dash's ears perked up and noticed the growing noise of someone crashing through the undergrowth nearby. Twilight knew she was foaming at the mouth. She was sure she was from a dozen nicks and scratches, and she was positively certain that she could go faster still, though her body complained. She was no athlete, but she ran like a pony possessed now, fallen into a rhythm, hardly even thinking at all. Had the path always been this narrow? She was about to consider that one thing she'd been afraid to ask herself, whether she lost it or not. When she crested a small hill and found herself facing the bridge that led to the temple in the distance. And Rainbow Dash as well. Twilight Sparkle nearly fell as she skidded to a halt, barely avoiding a painful collision with the supports of the rickety wooden bridge. The blue Pegasus pony stood frozen, staring at her, eyes wide. Relief flooded Twilight when she saw that Rainbow Dash appeared to be unhurt. She wasn't quite sure what she had expected but her heart practically jumped at the sight. She tentatively approached her friend. Rainbow, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. I didn't think. I'm so stupid, she began stammering. Twilight, are you okay? Rainbow Dash asked. I mean, sure, I tend to get a little caught up in things sometimes, or often, actually, but I should have stopped to think. Twilight, Dash tried again, glancing up and down at Twilight's body. Twilight's vision blurred a little with tears. And then, Fluttershy told me about the feather, and I've been thinking, and... Twilight! Dash said, her voice carrying a note of alarm now as she approached, looking mortified. Oh, the feather! Twilight quickly twisted around to undo the buckle on one of her saddlebags that remained somewhat intact. Rainbow Dash, I'm so sorry. Twilight! Oh, that sounded very masculine. Dash yelled at the top of her lungs, and before Twilight could say anything more, Rainbow Dash had put an uncharacteristically gentle hoof on her mouth, completely at odds with her expression, which conveyed urgency, fear, and... was that anger? Just shut up! Tell me, are you okay, Twilight? Hoof removed, Twilight took a steadying breath. But she couldn't think of only one thing. She slowly opened the saddlebag, showing Rainbow Dash the feather which rested inside. Part of it was singed and was caked with dirt, and there was some dried blood on it. Where had that come from? Shaking her head a little, Twilight looked over the Pegasus again and sniffled. I've ruined it. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. Very carefully, she extracted the feather with her mouth. Rainbow Dash hadn't even looked at the feather. She was still looking straight at Twilight. It was obvious that she was doing everything she could to hold back tears herself. Are you giving it back? Rainbow Dash asked, quietly. Twilight stared at her, a little confused. She was also feeling dizzy, though she wasn't sure why. She blinked heavily a few times. Rainbow Dash got a little blurrier with each blink. Rainbow Dash asked again, intense and urgent. Are you giving me back the feather? Twilight suppressed the urge to point out that Rainbow Dash had technically never given her the feather, or told her what she felt. What Twilight hoped Rainbow Dash felt, rather. The Twilight hoped for it, and by itself, was a revelation. If Twilight had any designs of a longer, convoluted answer, brevity was blessedly forced upon her by the fact that she had a feather in her mouth. That poor, abused, beautiful soft feather, and what it meant. The purple unicorn simply shook her head grimly. The feather was hers. This triggered another bout of dizziness, and she staggered a little. When she tried to regain her balance, she found that one of her hooves wouldn't support her, and she fell to the ground as if she'd forgotten how to ever stand at all. Dash cried out, but Twilight found she couldn't say anything for fear of losing grip on the feather. She bit down on it with all her might as her mind taunted her with visions of wind seizing hold of it and carrying it far away. Before she knew it, she was dreaming, lost in a chaotic mess of feathers and dark shapes. When next Twilight came to, eyes cracking open, it seemed all was white. It took her a few moments to realize she was in a bed. Celestia's sun was streaming in through an open window, making everything eye-blindingly bright, automatically assuming her morning routine. Twilight tried to twist around and get out of bed, but her body was sluggish. She hesitated, struggling to pry her eyes fully open. Something was off. Her walls weren't supposed to be white. She was in a hospital room. Suddenly, she remembered. She stopped breathing for a second, looking around in panic. What she saw calmed her more surely than anything else could have possibly done. All around the room lay her friends, sleeping and snoring soundly, or delicately in the case of Rarity. Pinkie Pie lay on her back over Applejack's flank. Rarity was asleep in a chair.
What?
What?
It's over there. Stop.
You mean we're actually getting dinner tonight?
Yeah. I know.
Oh my god.
Are you reading?
What are
right
we
now?
having?
Are you reading right now?
Yeah.
So, we're having pizza.
Pizza?
Yeah.
Oh!